Hey everyone, welcome back to the Leadership Project with your host Mick Spears. Our vision is to inspire all leaders to challenge the status quo. We bring you weekly topics and thought-provoking guests to get you to stop, reflect, and think about what it means to be a leader in a modern world. Our aim is to help you become the leader you wish you always had, as we learn together and lead together. Today's episode is brought to you by my new book, You're a Leader, Now What? The Proven Path to High-Performance Leadership. The book contains many of the great lessons that we've been learning together during the Leadership Project podcast, together with many other lessons that I've collected over my 30-year career as a leader. The book is aimed at first-time leaders, but really there's lessons in there for everyone. It would be greatly appreciated if you could go and grab your copy on Amazon as either an ebook or a paperback, and if you could leave us an honest review on Amazon. Now, on with the show. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project. I'm greatly honoured today to be joined by Amy McCae. Amy is a holistic wellness coach who works with organizations around their workplace well-being. And in particular, she looks at empowering CEOs with mindfulness meditation. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where today's conversation goes. Now, Amy, let's get straight into it. Please do say hello to our audience and give us a little bit of your background and what led you to be with us today.
Well, first I want to tell you, thank you, Mick, for connecting with me and giving me this opportunity to join you. And hello to everybody who's listening. Thank you for being here. It wouldn't make any difference if you weren't here to listen. So we're blessed to have you as well. My background is, well, to start at the beginning, I just spent my entire life wanting to be a doctor. And then my mother died when I was 20, and she died of cancer. And it was a traumatic experience for me. And I decided I didn't want to be a doctor any longer. And then oddly enough, I ended up then, maybe ironically enough, I spent the majority of my 20s chronically sick. I had irritable bowel syndrome, interstitial cystitis, fibromyalgia, 9 different urologists. I went to the bathroom 30 to 40 times a day. I was sick, miserable, suicidal. And then I was kind of blessed. I had a day where I couldn't take care of my now 19-year-old. She was a baby. And I literally did crawl to the phone to get help and to help take care of her because I couldn't take care of her. And I just said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I want to do something different. So I just went looking for healing and found places that I didn't know existed before that. And fitness, nutrition, and meditation changed my life. So I just went on a quest to learn more and more. And I'm on my second mindfulness meditation teacher certification right now. I'm finishing that, but I have 15 other certifications outside of those, all related to mind, body, well-being, essentially. So that's what I do. It inspired me, going through that inspired me to want to share that. Why wouldn't other people want, to have that information? So I like to be able to share that and inspire them and help them to find healing or find support or whatever it might be to be able to live their best life. No one should have to spend it chronically sick if there's solutions.
Yeah, very, very good. And first of all, I want to say I'm sorry for your loss of your mum at such a young age. That must have been tough. And that realization at that point that you did not want to go into medicine. And I'm sorry to hear that you went through so much chronic illness yourself. I'm now glad that you come out the other end of that and you found your path and something that works for you. And now you're able to share that with the world. So, so I'm sorry that you went through that, but I do feel that maybe the world is richer for you being ready to be able to share what you do now with everyone. Where does that end up in workplace well-being?
So in the United States currently, like in the very climate we have right now, they're calling it the Great Resignation. I have a preference to calling it the Great reevaluation. I don't always like the terminology we use, but we have them right now. Like that's a terminology that we're currently using. I'm not sure I agree. I think reevaluation sounds better because I think what appears to have happened is during this coronavirus mess that we have, people were stuck at home and a lot of the things that were already there became really big things. Maybe they weren't as big But when you're stuck in your house and then you have homeschooling, there's all these other pressures, and people lost jobs, and or employers made them try to get people to work from home, and they didn't have the capacity. They didn't have the support, the resources, and there are all these changes. There was a whole bunch of changes. As a society, as a collective, we went through a traumatic, experience. So I think now what has happened is people are like, well, wait a minute, what matters? And obviously health matters. We have the virus mess, and health matters. How are we going to prevent disease, and how are we going to protect ourselves, and how do we make healthy work environments now? Because they don't look the same. People's needs aren't the same. Now they're wanting things like purpose and passion, and to be passionate about their work, not just to go to work for the paycheck. I don't think people want to go to work for the paycheck anymore. I think they did it. And we were definitely in the US, it felt like a hamster wheel sort of society where everyone's just doing their thing, and then it's kids' activities and whatnot. And I don't think that that's the case anymore. Obviously it's still occurring, but people are saying, no, we need something different. I just co-authored an article with an industrial hygienist. He's very big at OSHA. And it was on empathetic leadership, because that's where the shift has changed to, let's be a little bit kinder. Let's be a little bit more compassionate. Let's understand needs, and let's merge. You can't just leave home at home and go to work, and then you go to work and be a different person, and then come home and do something. And you can't work from home and be this work person and then still have to be this homeschooling parent or this mother or this father or whatever. I think all the worlds and everything have gotten really blended. And now we need to figure out how we become whole beings and holistically manage our wellness at home and work, and in the middle of it.
Yeah. Okay. So I've heard countless terms in terms of the Great Resignation, the Great Protest, the Great Realization, the Great Great Reimagination. You name it. There's lots of terms that are going out there, but it is telling us something. It's I almost feel like it's happened for a reason. It's been stuck up there for us to go, hey, we've gone wrong here. We've turned left somewhere along the road, and it's time for us to reset a little bit. So it is telling us something. And health and well-being, health is something that we all need to deal with, right? Every single person on the planet needs to look after themselves in some way, or they are going to have problems. So that makes complete sense. Tell me your definition of empathetic leadership then.
So empathy to me is it's one domain of emotional intelligence, just one. And it's basically the ability to, emotional intelligence, as you know, is the ability to understand, recognize, acknowledge your own emotions as well as someone else's. And empathy is that feeling where you feel somebody else's emotions. And mindfulness teaches us that empathy is what moves you to being compassionate, and being compassionate is what drives you to act. That makes you want to relieve someone's suffering. Again, I think empathy and leadership is leading with that. In your conversations, even if you're not a leader like a CEO of an organization, you're leading conversations as a husband or as a parent or as a teacher. In any position, you have a potential to be in a leadership position in just your communication and the way in which you hold yourself. So I think leading with empathy allows us to just be kinder. I often joke that everything we needed to learn, we learned in kindergarten. We just somehow forgot it. Just be nice. It brings us to being nice. And there's so much suffering in the world that to be able to feel the compassion for that and want to do it, that's what inspires us, that brings passion. And that's how we change the world. When you're like, oh, I see something, I see a problem that needs solved. I feel for this. I feel for it. I want to relieve suffering. I want to make this world a better place. To come from that, then this world wouldn't, I don't think, have as many, certainly not as many issues. And I don't know what we do without empathy, but, I think that, and it can be a good thing too, when you feel someone else's joy, and mirror neurons. I think we talked about that. Mirror neurons, we were designed to be empathetic. I think we just get disconnected. We get disconnected from our bodies, from our own intuition, our own insight. We're busy doing, achieving, things like that, looking for these processes and procedures which all hold a place. However, we must be in line with our intuition, our gut instinct, and our physiology. Our physiology says that you're designed to be empathetic. I have had people tell me that empathy was a terrible thing because they didn't want to feel someone else's suffering. It was only a terrible thing if you have crappy boundaries. you know? If you understand, if you have emotional intelligence, you realize what's their stuff and what's your stuff. And then you make a conscious choice from that.
Yeah, let's unpack that. Let's unpack that a little bit. How does one set those boundaries?
I practice mindfulness-based stuff, such as a body scan, which would be being able to, in like an integrative practice during the day might be as simple as sensing your hands and feet. I teach this to nurses actually a multitude of times, or your core, so that you're in tune with your body. So you can know stuff. It can be over here and you know what's going on with that person and you understand what's going on and you can have compassion for them and you can be empathetic, but you still have aware of your body. In an actual practice, you're like perhaps scanning your body from head to toe or toe to head and tuning into each part of your body so that you have an understanding of your separateness, you know, but yet you're connected because we have this, you know, idea of mirror neurons and empathy. But a body scan is very, very good for learning to tune into what's yours and what somebody else's. And even something as simple as mindful breathing, because again, that gets you back grounded. You know, it calms your nervous system. It deactivates, you know, your fight, flight, or freeze response. It deactivates that. And so that allows you to make a more conscious decision, you know, and then you can pause, even if it's 3 seconds. If you pause, then it doesn't feel so intense, all that other, you know, we've all walked into a room and been like, oh my gosh, what the heck is going on in here? It felt really icky. Well, pause, take a couple breaths, sense your hands and feet. Then you know what's going on. So that's kind of the integrative practices that I'd suggest. And you can do them formally, like mindfulness, meditation, breathing for a practice for 20 or 30 minutes, or a body scan for 20 or 30 minutes. And that way it's easier to do. It becomes very natural. If you have a formal practice, then it becomes kind of natural in your daily life. Yeah.
But what would you say to, like, there's a lot of people that would be listening in the audience that go, rightly or wrongly, by the way, but they would have a mindset that they can't find 20 to 30 minutes in their day.
2 minutes.
2 minutes, yeah. Right. And that example that you used of walking into a room and rather than reacting to what's in front of you, just take a few seconds, take a few deep breaths. And it does work, by the way. It's scientifically proven to get you out of your root brain and back into your limbic brain and your neocortex. If you just take a few deliberate and intentional breaths, it does actually work.
Yeah. And if you don't have to practice it. To me, it's just easier. It's my passion. I don't ever preach that you have to be a monk on a mountain chanting Om. I think that it discourages people. I think that these gurus that, I don't want to pass judgment, but I have heard so many people come to me or be turned off by the idea because they thought it had to be a certain way. Or when they try to do it, they think they're doing it wrong. And that's defeating the purpose. You know, it's not about if you're doing it right. I mean, it's not at all. In fact, it's a non-judgmental thing. So if somebody's being told they have to sit in a certain position or do it for a certain way or a certain amount of time, it defeats the whole idea of what mindfulness was meant to be.
Yeah. So, and people do beat themselves up thinking that they're doing it wrong. And like
all the time.
Yeah, right.
And they'll tell me that when I try to meditate, all I do is have thoughts and wonder if I'm doing it wrong and I have all these thoughts. And the goal is never to not have thoughts. It's for those thoughts not to control you. You're not supposed to be trying to control them. You know, let go of that. What you resist persists, and you're going to have a really difficult time if you're sitting around whatever. But I always say take the 2-minute challenge. And if it's easiest to do it in a transition period, practice it in a transition period. So when you sit down at your desk before you check your phone in the morning, after you eat or before you eat, I get in my car and I'll take a couple breaths and I sense my hands and feet in my car because I feel like driving's overstimulating to me, the electronics and other cars. So I just do the same things. I just find little mini moments throughout the day. Obviously, before you have a conversation, when you're mad, you know, before you send that text or before you send that email, practice the pause. That's a good time.
That's a great suggestion right there. And I do it, by the way, but the reason why I brought that up is I didn't want people to be scared off going, oh, I can't possibly do that. If you've never tried it before, dip your toe in the water first, right? So I meditate 15 minutes a day is the time. And then I've got it scheduled in my calendar for 30 minutes. 15 minutes of that is mindfulness and meditation. And then the other 15 minutes is setting myself up for the day. So I'm going through what are the top 3 things that I must achieve today? What are the things that I need to share with my team to make sure that they're empowered? So it's just like my check-in with myself every day. But if you've never tried it before, try dipping your toe in the water first. Don't be scared off and thinking that you do have to spend 4 hours meditating like on a mountain, or it doesn't work that way. Right?
That's it. Okay. When you're little, the things you're saying there sound like really little things, but they're big things. Those are the things that set you up for having an intentional and mindful. Some people don't like the word mindful. I even have a client. She's one of my best clients, but she doesn't want me to ever use the word mindful. She doesn't like it. She likes it if I say self-aware. So choose whatever word, like you can call it whatever you want. I mean, there's a lot of studies on mindfulness and I can go in depth on mindfulness-based stuff, but if the word makes you cringe or it doesn't resonate with you, then pick something that does. Be intentional living. Usually most people flow with that, or attention training, or being self-aware, something, those phrases tend to resonate a little bit more broadly.
I've not heard that visceral kind of reaction to the word mindful before. I have heard it for meditation for sure, but not
meditation. Yes, definitely meditation.
Not for mindfulness. Yeah, interesting. So let's unpack that a little bit. One of the aspects of mindfulness is being present and having presence. And one of your things in your bio, one of your quotes, the greatest gift you can give the world is the gift of your presence. Tell us what that means to you.
To me, that means, here'd be an example. I have 19 and 10-year-old daughters. To be able to be fully present with them is, to me, the greatest gift I can give them. I'm not checking my phone. I'm not thinking about what I have to do next. I'm not having anxiety about the future. I'm not regretting the past. Simply being. And that can be with any relationship, but obviously it is very heartfelt to me. And it can be a business connection. In Zoom, we get to have these conversations, and it matters the same that you still are present, even if it's online. And people matter, but it means the same being present in my work. Like when I go to make a post, I can't be distracted. When I go to write something, or I go to, do even a contract, any aspect of my work, if I don't answer texts and I don't answer emails and I let everything else go and I just say, this is my block of time to do this, and I'm centered and focused and I set intentions, it flows. And it can be partial logic and be partially intuitive, but it flows, and it's this much greater, much more impactful event. The outcome of relationships, the outcome of whatever work I put, but it's really just letting everything else go and allowing yourself to be fully present with whatever it is. And it can be uncomfortable. We don't talk as much about the uncomfortableness of that. We have difficult emotions. I'm a mindfulness teacher and I have difficult emotions. What happens is I turn towards them instead of away from them. And I make friends with them. I invite them in for tea. Not always. I'm very human. Sometimes I'm like, no way, I'm not doing this. But I come back to it and be present with it. Because again, what you resist persists. And if you make friends with those emotions, they don't have so much control over you. And, they're not as intense.
There's 3 really important things that you've covered there. And I want to delve a bit deeper onto 2 of them. The first one, and this might be interesting for your client that doesn't like the word mindfulness. Everyone in the world wants to feel like they matter, and they want to feel like they matter to you. So being present is about being in the moment with that person and being present with them and not being distracted by your phone, etc. It's like a matter of respect, but it shows them that you care about them and that the most important person in your world right now is that person. And I can tell you, Amy, right now, that I'm sure there's lots of other things that are going on in my life and your life right now. But for the purpose of right now, the most important person in my world right now is Amy McCae. And we're talking together, and you have my undivided attention as we go through this. And that's me being present, and it's me showing you that you matter to me. So I'd say that's the first thing. And the second thing, Amy, that you brought up there was essentially about time blocking versus multitasking. And I want to unpack that a little bit and hear from you what you do. So there's studies now from the University of Michigan that prove that multitasking just doesn't work. In fact, we don't even do it. the ones that say that, oh, I'm a great multitasker, all they are is a very fast task switcher. That's all that they're doing. And when you're task switching like that, the quality of the work and the output of the work actually goes down. It doesn't go up, it goes down. But I'd love to hear your tips and tricks. How do you do time blocking versus pushing multitasking away?
I have found that my to-do lists are never ending, and it leaves me very unsatisfied. And that's a horrible way to spend your days, to have a to-do list that's never done and unsatisfied. So I switched to time blocking, blocks of time, and I will say I will stay focused for 90 minutes on this. And then I feel satisfied, you know? And you have to choose your time. I don't always choose 90 minutes. Sometimes it's a longer project. Sometimes my schedule's set up between meetings and there's only a 15-minute time block. So I'll be like, okay, I have 15 minutes. What's on the list of that I can do, that are the little things, you know, that might, you know, maybe it's making a doctor's appointment for the kids, or, you know, or something along those lines. That might be something else. And I found that is time blocking in chunks of time gives me the satisfied feeling. There's no more, the to-do list is going to be there. And I tried to make friends with it, and there was no making friends with it. The only way I made friends with it was to put it aside. And I was taught in coaching to choose 3 things 3 times a week and have that be your focus, and then fill in the rest. And then it's not so overwhelming. So if I sit down Sunday or even Monday morning and say, okay, these are the things I'm focusing on. And then each day I'm like, okay, this is today I focus on this and this, but I do it in blocks. It does not, that multitasking thing, you know, I'm a single mom. I thought I was a queen of multitasking. I was a queen of being stressed because I had too many things that I thought I could do or should do, or whatever those stories are we tell ourselves. But time blocking has been the most productivity is always a big thing. And it's been the most satisfying and the most productive to my time management, for sure.
Yeah, same for myself. And it took me a while to discover it as well. But ever since I have, it really does work. And I'll add a couple of tips of my own of what I do. And I'm going to use social media as well. You were talking about it before. Use that as one of my examples. I'm quite prolific on social media across multiple channels. And I think from the outside world, probably people might think that that's all I do all day, as I'm just sitting on social media. Well, first of all, little tip, I've got a team that does it for me. So hi, Gerald, hi, Joanne. So they're heavy there. And then I have 1 hour a day where I am personally in there, going in there and commenting and responding to comments and answering questions, et cetera, et cetera. It's 1 hour every day where I go in there, I get it done, and then I get back out of there. So it's not a distraction. So that's one for me. And the other one I have is about mindfulness as well. And it's about how I treat thoughts that come into my head, because one of the enemies of time blocked focus is if you're thinking about something else and something else is playing on your mind. So to my left is a big whiteboard, and in the bottom left-hand corner of that whiteboard, it's my vision board. It's got my vision, my purpose, my mission. It's got all of my weekly activities that must be done this week and all of those things planned out. And in the bottom left is a parking lot. And what I find is if I have one of those thoughts that pops into my head that I feel like it's about to be a distraction or a time sponge, or I'm going to be thinking about that when I should be thinking about something else, the very practice of just writing it down in my parking lot means I can let it go, because I know that I'm not going to forget it's there, and I can come back to it at a more timely manner. So that's how I go about that.
I think that's really awesome advice. You know, even like say I wake up in the middle of the night, people always have sleep issues. It's a common complaint. And I just get up and I'm like, well, just write that stuff down. And then I tell myself, you're going to deal with it later. You've gotten, you know, you put it aside. And I tell that when I teach them mindfulness-based meditation stuff, I'm like, just put those thoughts over in a basket for a minute and tell them you'll come back to them.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
It's not getting rid of them. It's not trying to control them. It's just, I'll be back.
And that writing it down works for me. You come up with your own technique, but writing it down, as soon as I write it down, I feel like I can stop thinking about it. Yeah, I'm relieved, right? Yeah. All right, very good. Now, the third one that I want to unpack is that you spoke about making emotion your friend. So instead of you certainly avoided bottling it up and you're not ignoring the emotion, but you're also turning it into your friend. Tell us more about how you do that.
So again, I would use mindfulness-based practices. There's the name it to tame it. So name it. Most of the time when I ask people, what are you feeling? They don't even know what words. They don't even have words. So start with the basics, being able to, number one, be able to name it. And then body scans help to tune into where it's at in your body. So if you practice a body scan before you start doing more, we call it's affect label in psychology, but it's just we call it mindful emotions and mindfulness. I don't know why. You're paying attention to your emotions, I suppose, but you'll notice that your emotions resonate in different parts of your body and they all have a different sensation. So it's kind of proof that holistic wellness exists. And then cultivating compassion and curiosity for it. Like, hey, what's going on with that? Do you have a color? Do you have a sensation? And what are you doing there? What can you tell me? Just asking questions, which seems silly if you haven't done it. But when you do it, you're like, for example, I had a gentleman in a corporation who it wasn't even anger. Like you would think anger would be red or something, but his arm would feel like it was on fire with a specific emotion. And he was puzzled by it and wanted to know more. So I'm like, just ask some questions and just ask. And the second time we did it, it was gone and it never came back again. But he just asked questions. It's kind of like validating, like empathy. When you understand what someone's going through, it's easy to validate them. And then people seem to move out of the position they're in when they're validated. I think that as humans, we seek to be validated on a really innate level. And that happens with your feelings. If you take the time to validate it, they shift. They're not like in an uproar to such a degree. If you validate them and be like, you know what? Yeah, that does hurt. That was sad. It is unfortunate. And, then you can decide, do you have control over it or what decision, but you can make a conscious decision then because you understand where it came from and how it resonates in your body. And then you make a decision on how to manage it.
Yeah, this is great, Amy. So asking yourself better questions, if I can kind of paraphrase back to you a little bit. So, what is that emotion? What am I feeling right now? Mm-hmm. Why that emotion and why that emotion now? And from there, you can start to decode it and go, well, what is that emotion trying to tell you? Because emotion is trying to tell you something. It's trying to tell you something about a need. A positive emotion is telling you about a met need, and a negative emotion is telling you about an unmet need. And it could be a very simple thing that you just need to be aware of. But that process, right. notice and name it, and then ask yourself some clever questions. You'll be surprised how powerful that is. Yeah, really good advice, Amy. Mm-hmm. I want to come back to the empathy again now, and you did talk before about boundaries, and I want to talk a bit more about that. So there are three types of empathy, and you're right to say empathy is only one element of emotional intelligence, but there's three types of empathy. There's cognitive empathy, which is just to understand what someone else is seeing and their perspective. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it, by the way. I think that's something
right. That's an important piece to remember because people think that clarity there is always good.
Yeah, right. Then emotional empathy is to understand the emotion that they're feeling, and then empathic concern. This is the one I want to test with you. Empathic concern is the closest thing to compassion. That's when you start feeling that emotion yourself and you want to fix it. You want to do something about it. How does a CEO, as an example, because you do work a lot with CEOs, how do they set up the right boundaries around empathic concern so that they don't end up either in one of two situations where the person has shared their problems with them and now all of a sudden I'm carrying the weight of the problems of all of my team around and I'm the one that's got mental fitness or mental health issues because I'm overloaded with all of the problems of everyone I know. Or how do they stay objective? Because sometimes CEOs need that level of objectivity in their decision making. So I want to come back to that boundary, particularly around empathic concern.
I think it's important that there's a balance. That's how you have the boundary. And I think this comes back to some degree with values. So what are your values? What are the values of this organization? what are your mission, your vision? Because it might look different in different CEOs and different businesses are going to have a different level of empathy, or not even different level, but a different way in which they approach it, because they're coming from a different space. So I have a male CEO that says he's empathetic, but he's not. He's empathetic to specific things. And I have another one that's too empathetic. So it's a constant coming back to, what are my values? How do I feel? Like if you're tuning into how you're feeling, then you're knowing is this a boundary? Does this feel uncomfortable? Does it feel safe? And I think I don't want to see the world shift to CEOs and business owners trying to please employees entirely either. Yes, they need to be pleased, but we need to have a balance. We can't be having a bunch of people, grown-ups, making demands that aren't realistic either. So I think we can be understanding and compassionate and empathetic, and we can also say, no, this is the mission and vision of our values, and this is what we follow. This is how we do business. And then those intimate, personal conversations, again, look a little bit differently, and you can't pry. I really think, again, there's some legalities depending on what part of the country you're in or what part of the world. Assessments help, because then you know where your problems are, and then you can get the group support and the training and those sorts of things. So the problems that you're worried that people are going to be coming to, you're addressing before they're even, so you're not having these potentially boundary, pushy boundary sorts of things. And there are people that you're going to have to let go. They might not just be a good fit either. I think that that can be a boundary. Maybe they're not a good fit. If they have mental health issues that could put them at risk for getting injured, these are things that need to be thought about.
Yeah. Good point, Amy. And there's always a line, and the workplace is not a place to go for therapy. So when it gets to when it comes to a clinically diagnosed condition, that's where you need professional help. Yeah, very, very good point. All right. This one's going to be a challenging one. There's a lot of toxic cultures out there right now, Amy. The latest Gallup results tell us that only 20% of people in the world truly love their job and like their boss. The level of disengagement is at pretty much an all-time low, and that's why we're seeing things like the Great Resignation. I'd like to hear your advice. Let's say that someone is working in an organization where they themselves are trying to work on their own mindfulness, etc., but they're living or working in a toxic environment where the culture is not like that yet. I'll give some hope and say that hopefully organizations are going to get there. But if they're working in a toxic culture where either their direct manager or the people around them are toxic with each other, they're not supportive, they're not mindful, how does someone get through that?
Again, I think this becomes a question of, what are your options? Can you leave? Do you want to leave? What are you willing? There's always that. What are you willing to do? What impact does it have on your health if you stay? What impact is it having on your relationships when you're not there? When you start asking those questions, you start to see, and I always suggest writing them down, because when it's in black and white in front of you, you can't sit and make up crap in your head about it anymore. It's in front of you, and then you have an opportunity to make a different decision. I think living in it without looking at your options would be very, very hard. I mean, I do think sometimes we have to deal with certain things temporarily. That's kind of, unfortunately, part of life. So it would be a constant coming back to how am I feeling? What are my values? Does this line up? How is it impacting my, the rest of my life and my whole well-being? You have to just really be and looking at the options, because it can be inspiring to look at the options and see, maybe you can go to somebody else. Maybe you can move departments. I've watched people move departments and become, not have to leave their, the whole employer thing and start all over. They just move departments and find what they need, or shift roles. I have one client that shifted. She really just wanted to be more creative. It took even a couple sessions to really figure that out. And she just needed to be more creative to be happy in her or role. So she did find a position within the company and didn't have to take a pay cut or anything, but it was finding out, what is it that I really need? What's missing? What is it I need?
Yeah, what was the unmet need again? Yeah, very, very good. I like that. I'd like to add a couple of things and just get your thoughts on it. So I like what you said about, have a look at your options, have a look around, including you don't even have to look too far. It could be adjacent and around in other departments in your existing organisation. I'd like to add that mindfulness in an organisation needs to start somewhere. And if you start doing it and creating an environment where others can do it as well, it can have a positive impact and others start to feel confident to do it. Yeah. And then if you come across one of these toxic environments or toxic managers, I just want you to remember this is you can't control the behavior of another human being. You can only control your own behavior. And when someone else is treating you with disrespect, treating others with disrespect, whatever it is, whatever that toxic behavior is, it speaks more about them than it does you. Right? So
That's really good. Yeah.
Go home feeling proud about what you did, and you know what? Just let it wash over you if you can.
You can't control other people. You can only control your reaction to them. So that's a huge, huge and important piece. Don't get too wrapped up in sometimes we don't know what's going on with another person either. That happens a lot. And again, if you stopped and asked some questions, and if you there's a book called Difficult Conversations, and it talks about how to have those difficult conversations. So I'd inspire, empower, go have the difficult conversation and see. Maybe you don't understand what's going on, and maybe they can get you to the right person, and you can get them mindfulness-based or whatever training you need to start shifting that culture. Be the change is always a good.
Yeah, good. And it could be.
Even if it doesn't change there, right? It'll change where you end up. Like if you do it, you may stay and it may shift, or you may get naturally moved somewhere.
Yeah,
it'll just happen.
Very good. And to be clear, we're not saying put up with the toxic culture. We're not saying that at all. But we're saying self-regulate yourself around it, and then try something. And for that person, it could be a lack of self-awareness. There could be something going on in their life. They could be going through a marriage breakdown. Who knows? But it could be just a lack of self-awareness. Hey, Jim, do you know the other day in the meeting when you were like this, do you know that it made me feel like this, or I felt like this because of blah, blah, blah? It may be a complete blind spot for
Very easy. Yeah, it might be very simple.
All right, very good. I want to go a bit deeper now in this work with executives, and I'm going to read back to you a short part of a quote that I've seen on your website and get your view on this one. Mindfulness should no longer be nice to have for executives. It's a must-have, a way to keep our brain healthy, to support self-regulation and effective decision-making capabilities, to protect ourselves from toxic stress. Tell me about this must-have for executives.
I think because of my understanding of mindfulness essentially being the same thing as self-awareness, I find that self-awareness, again, being one of these key domains of emotional intelligence, one of the most important things. Like, I don't know if anybody could really live without it. I think executives lived without it because, again, we were on that processes and procedures and results and productivity or whatnot. But the reality is, if you tune into your body, you might know what to feed it, how to move it. If you tune into your emotions, you'll have a greater understanding of yourself and for others, and you'll make different choices. All of these things in which we, and you can regulate your own nervous system through breathing, paying attention to your breath. So why wouldn't executives need those skills? And we know and understand that neuroscience of this, which is allowing you to operate with your prefrontal cortex instead of, operating from like your amygdala, from the reptilian part of your brain, where everybody's in that fight, flight, or freeze response. And especially we've been in such a fear-based mode the past couple of years that now I think if we don't, you have people just simply reacting. They're not making conscious choices. And if we want visionary leaders, executives and CEOs, and these people that have the power to do this, we need them thinking with their higher levels of their minds.
Okay. Yeah, really good. All right. So that leads me to my next question. you have a program called the Empathic Leadership Mastermind Program. What does that look like? How do you work with these executives, maybe particularly ones that have gotten to this level and have never heard of mindfulness before? They've never really looked deeply at empathy. They might have known what it was, but they've never really taken a critical look of what it means to be an empathic leader. What does your program look like?
So it starts with all those basic mindfulness stuff like mindful breathing and body scans and gratitude and mindful eating and all these really basic things. We start there because a byproduct of mindfulness, for lack of a word, or a side effect, is empathy. So it's naturally built or created or developed through these practices, and then they get to experience it and feel it. And when you do it in a group setting, it normalizes it. It makes us all more human. So it's great to have one-on-one stuff, but the group process, when people are willing, is a beautiful thing to be able to share, because then we understand that we all question this person or have thoughts about this or judgments about that or judgments about ourselves. All of those things come out, and we have the ability then, this space to be a little bit gentler, a little bit kinder, and then take that with us. Like, what did we learn? Now we get to go take it into the rest of our daily lives, into work, into leading.
What does it look like in terms of structure? So I'll clarify that question. Do you work with entire executives of one company, or is it more a public offering where
it's been a public offering, and I'm working on getting it into organizations? That's the goal. That is the goal. I'm not I don't know when the word empathetic leadership became popular either. So I just, through mindfulness, found it to be the most powerful aspect, the emotional intelligence piece of mindfulness, and then the specific empathy, self-awareness and empathy being, to me, they seem like the most important because they have such an impact on health, relationships, success, all of these things. So to me, that's been my focus. So my goal is to have that in organizations. Yeah, that is, I think it would be good for anybody. And then I personally, I find it challenging to work with individuals that are just the individuals. Like, it's hard to shift an entire organization with just one individual. It's very hard. And then I feel like I have a lot of things all scattered all over the place then. So to really make an impact, to me, is way better if I can go in and do the whole company. Yeah. And everybody's on board. I've done a lot of trainings where I get flustered because management will hire me to maybe take care of the do group training for an example was a bank call center, and leadership. It was a human resource director that hired me, and they hired me repeatedly for a long time, but leadership wasn't on board. They were like, "You're the guys that are the ones with the problem," and so that's what I see. And unfortunately, CEOs, sometimes feel that way too. That everybody else is a problem. So figuring out the best balance there it's always intriguing. And again, the virus shifted everything, and it's been harder to get even into organizations. So I think we're opening back up and we're getting back to that. And the online stuff is awesome. It's a great supplement, but I don't think it's a great replacement for everything, especially when you're talking about something like mindfulness. It's much easier to read a room and really be empathetic to everybody in the room if I can be in person, at least some of the time, not all of the time, but at least some of the time. And we weren't really allowed to do that. So it's been challenging, but it's coming back a little bit. So I'm excited for that.
I got to say, that's a little bit of a red flag there. One of the statements that you used was, well, why would we do it? You're the one that's the problem. That's a bit of an issue right there.
Yes. Yes.
And I think, by the way, just a personal opinion, I think there's a plus and minus with that. With the public offering, one of the beauty that can come with that, if you do go off and do a public program where you're there with people from other companies and other countries, et cetera, it can enrich the learning because you start learning about...
It's much more diverse.
Yeah, it's more diverse, and you learn about other cultures and other companies and all that kind of stuff. But fully agree with you, then the power of let's call it an in-house program, but it's not an in-house program. It's really the organizational program, is that shared experience. So
in community, in an organization, to be able to all be together, you create a different sense of community. Different sense of community. But to develop empathy, having the diversity, and especially being inclusive becomes such a big thing. To be able to have a public program, we need to experience what other people are going through all around the world and understand. So
yeah,
definitely.
It'll be interesting to see a blend of both of those kind of programs going forward, and where you do get that diversity of thought going, but also where you have shared experience and a level of accountability. Like, so imagine that the entire executive go through a transformational program together, then the learning doesn't stop at the end of the program. They continue to talk about it. They continue to hold each other to account. So, yeah. All right, really good. I think maybe one more question before we get to the rapid round. What do you think is the biggest misunderstanding about what mindfulness is about?
The religious aspects.
Tell me more.
I think that I have had people tell me they can't meditate or do mindfulness meditation because their religion doesn't allow it, or that they think they have to have a religion. And then, of course, the thoughts. Those would be I don't have time. I can't control my thoughts. And don't I have to be a Buddhist or something like that? Those are the three most common, I think, I don't want to say misinformed. That sounds judgmental, but confused, not quite connected to what it really means.
I get what you mean. Yeah. All right. Very good. So that probably does bring us to a close now, Amy. Well, I'd like to go into our rapid fire round. These are the same questions we ask with all of our guests. So the first thing is, and this will be interesting because you had a major life-changing event when you were 20. What's the one thing that you know now that you wish you knew when you were 20?
Self-love.
Tell me more about that.
As a kind of a driven perfectionist, and I was very critical and judgmental, and I don't think I was very easy on myself till I got much, much older. And had I just said, you're enough, you do enough, and I love you no matter what, and the mistakes were good, and that was all part of it. And I don't think I had to wasn't even that many years ago, and I still sometimes have those imposter syndrome thoughts or whatever. The difference is now I'm aware of them and I don't let them take control over my
That's life. Really powerful. That's really powerful. Thank you so much, Amy. What's your favorite book?
Well, two technically. Well, Search Inside Yourself is on a mindfulness. It's actually Google's emotional intelligence leadership program. It's called Search Inside Yourself, so it's based off that, and it's all mindfulness. It's just and they call it mindfulness. So that would be a favorite. And then a book called The Heart Mind Matrix, written by Joseph Chilton Pierce many years ago, and it's not an easy read. It's all quantum physics and spirituality, and it's not an easy read, but it's a life-changing book if you'll take the time to read it, because you will understand there's more to you than meets the eye, and he lays it out. And it was written decades ago. So.
Okay. All right, very good. And what's your favorite quote?
I don't know. I have so many. Probably mine. The one that the greatest gift you can give the world is a gift of your presence. I mean, it sums up what I really want to bring to the world. So. Yeah,
it's really, and it is a powerful one. It caught my eye as soon as I saw it. So very good. And finally, I'm sure that there's people out there that would want to know more and maybe take advantage of some of your programs and your services, Amy. So how do either individuals or businesses get hold of you so they can find out more?
Sure. Well, my email is Amy McCae, AMYMCCAE @gmail.com. I have two websites, amymccay.com and mindfulnessleadercoach.com. And then always you can just call me 402-740-9847.
All right, brilliant. And we're going to put your contact details, including your LinkedIn, etc., into.
Yeah, that's the best place too. LinkedIn. That's where I'm not on any. I will be on other social media. I've just managed to master LinkedIn. So
yeah, very good. So we'll be putting those links in the show notes as well. So thank you so much again, Amy. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for being very present and very mindful with us as we went through this interview. It was a great pleasure, and I learnt a lot today, and I'm sure the audience would have as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Today's episode was brought to you by my new book, You're a Leader, Now What? The Proven Path to High Performance Leadership. The book contains many of the great lessons that we have learned together here on the Leadership Project podcast, together with lessons that I've collected over my 30-year career as a leader. The book is aimed towards first-time leaders, but really there's something in there for everyone. If you would like to show your appreciation for this show, we would greatly appreciate if you were able to go and get your copy of the book on Amazon as either an ebook or a paperback, and if you could leave us an honest review on Amazon. Thank you for listening to the Leadership Project podcast at mickspears.com. A big call out to Faris Sadek for his sound design and editing of our audio and video content, and to the whole team at TLP, Joanne Gozon, Gerald Calabo, Rika Vidanes, and my wonderful supportive wife, Say Spears, who is also our operations manager. This show would simply not be possible without you. If you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a rating and review at Apple Podcasts. You can catch the video podcast and our video of the week at the Leadership Project YouTube channel, and you can join the conversation at the Leadership Project Facebook community group. We look forward to bringing you more great content and interviews next week as we continue to learn together and lead together. In the meantime, please do take care, look out for each other, and always remember to challenge the status quo.